But one of the biggest charge is it's just a story, there's no facts to it. You have to believe it by faith. Most of us, when we see that, what do? Right? We can't say anything. Right? Now, is that horrible? No, it's okay. We talked about the two types of tests for truth. Correspondence test, right? We've got that one that talks about it corresponds to reality. And then you have coherence test based on, hey, it may not correspond to reality, but by the amount of evidence you have, it's very reasonable to make this decision, right? So here we have a coherence test where, nobody wants to just believe Jesus rose from the dead if there's absolutely nothing and someone tells you to believe it because you're supposed to. Who wants to do that? If that were the case, there's like 13 major people that were radicals that claimed they were Messiah back then over history, and Jesus is no better than any of them. So, here, this is one reference. This is back in 2006 in a debate he held for the historical evidence of the resurrection at Holy Cross campus, one of the Veritas forums. These four facts have gotten even stronger as time goes on. Among scholars, they believed he was buried in the tomb. He died on the cross. He went to the tomb. The tomb was empty. He appeared in post-mortem appearances to the disciples and to 500 and many others. And the scholars believe that the disciples actually really believed he rose from the dead. These are facts now based on the evidence for the resurrection. This is powerful stuff, but we talk this way in church. We don't talk this way in the culture. I keep saying that. Constantly in the scriptures, because the context of the time, they're saying this stuff. Luke is saying, to start out the book of Luke, the gospel, inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which are most surely believed among us. So Luke is sitting here starting his gospel saying, okay, people are trying to put together a narrative of what we all know we believe. So here's my shot. I'm going to do it. He goes, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us. Now he's talking about many of these who were trying to put together a narrative are eyewitnesses. Luke says, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the first. He was not an eyewitness that we know of. To write to you an orderly account, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed. So you have Theophilus, who's in the church after all these things happened, being instructed, sitting there, think of it, a youth in Fusion, not being really sure whether or not all this stuff is true, but he's being taught it. And Luke goes, well, let me help you. I'm putting a narrative together from all the eyewitnesses of everything that happened so you can be certain that what you're being taught is true. Pretty awesome stuff. So when you get these people like Atkins, you see what happens when you just have a conversation. I have yet to find an atheist who comes up with an argument, except in some cases the idea of evil can be something that requires some thinking. But everything else, an argument that's not kind of incoherent, makes no sense. William Lane Craig got him to the point where he admitted they were probably telling the truth, that it probably should be included in the possibilities that they weren't lying and it weren't hallucinations. This really could have happened. But then he ended it to defend himself, Atkins, by saying, well, they're probably bored. There wasn't a lot to do, so they came up with it. I mean, just think about this, right? So again, we're dealing with, when it's written, these words from Luke aren't Luke's words. They aren't the eyewitnesses. Whose words are these? This is God Almighty speaking through Luke. This is the creator of the universe giving us a book to help us understand who he is. And he's telling us, all these things are written in here because you're like Theophilus. You weren't there, it's just 2,000 years later. And so I want to put down all the certainty of these things. And this book is filled with so much crazy stuff. The 6th month, the angel Gabriel goes to Galilee, named Nazareth, to a virgin, whose name was to a man betrothed named Joseph. I mean, he goes through, okay, it's the 6th month. He goes to, the angel's name is Gabriel. He goes to Galilee, which is really the region, and in there is Nazareth. This is constant, all these details. Why does God give us all this kind of breakdown, all this detail?
Sure. So that you can be sure.
So you can check it out. You can check it out. He does this constantly because he wants us to check it out and know the certainty of these things. So there's no reason to be afraid of what people say. It's all rhetoric. It's BS. And yet we don't say anything. So I keep harping on this. The goal of the class is to get you to the point where you realize he's alive. He's living in you. He wants you to tell people.